For 40 years, the Collier Community Foundation has helped transform moments of generosity into movements of change. Each decade has told a story of vision, compassion, and a belief that together we can make life better for all who call Collier County home. 40 years ago, the very first grant was for bricks and mortar and music, a gift that created the Cambier Park Bandshell.
Well, the first grant, we were very happy with it. The first grant was really for the bandshell down in the park in Cambier Park, and it was $1,000.
Well, I would say that it was just exhilarating. It was a real adrenaline rush. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
The acoustics there are really quite good, in some ways better than a number of other places I've conducted. The sound system, which makes it, I think, even a better thing for our audience.
Sometimes when I see what's going on now, when I read the annual report, when I go to events, it's just astonishing to me how much the Community Foundation contributes to this community. And I know a couple of times I've brought in friends to events, and they walk out saying, I had no idea.
From a bare concrete pad to a world-class shell, philanthropy made it possible. And 40 years later, the music still plays on. In the mid-1980s, a single grant planted the seed for a place of refuge Collier County desperately needed.
So the first grant that we ever received from the Community Foundation was a grant back in 1986 to help fund the new shelter.
But even the idea of a domestic violence shelter faced resistance.
At that time, in 1986, the shelter did not receive the blessing of the Board of County Commissioners to have a shelter, a domestic violence center here in Collier County. But in year 2, the Community Foundation stepped up again and gave another $4,000 grant to the shelter to be able to house victims of domestic violence here in Collier County. So the first shelter, we opened it in 1989, and it was a fourplex, and so it was a 20-bed apartment, and Within a fairly short amount of time, we had really outgrown that shelter, literally turning away more people than we were serving. And so at that point, we knew we needed to triple our capacity is what we did.
From a 20-bed fourplex, 40 years ago, the very first grant from the Community Foundation wasn't for a gift that created the Cambier Park Bandshell. The first $1,000 grant gave Naples not just a stage, but a heartbeat, a symbol.
I was approached by Peter Flood. He was complaining about how when he went out into the Gulf that he would spend hundreds of dollars on fuel, bait, boat payments, and would never catch any fish. And so he asked me if I would help him co-chair a project to build reefs off our coastline. So we needed an organization that was respected by the community, that was credible, that was transparent, and the Community Foundation was just that organization. As people began to see the little wins, and sometimes the big wins, they realized it really was going to happen. I will tell you that I believe that this project would have never taken place had it not been for the Collier Community Foundation.
A single grant planted the seed for a place of refuge Collier County desperately needed. But even the idea of a domestic violence shelter faced resistance. For Linda, the mission soon became personal.
Lorenzo Walker has had the Aviation, Airframe, and Power Plant Mechanics program since 2000. And much of the equipment and technology to teach the program up until the support from the Collier Community Foundation was the same. So essentially for a couple of decades, we had for the most part the same equipment that we were educating students on. Thanks to the Collier Community Foundation, we were able to significantly upgrade our instructional equipment for our Aviation, Airframe, and Power Plant Mechanics program. And that upgrade consists in the form of primarily a plane. And secondly, they supported us in acquiring a helicopter. If that's not enough, they've also supported us in acquiring some turbine engines and some reciprocating engines.
Mirrors the power of philanthropy itself. How one gift, even with heart, can transform a community. When we come together, donors, nonprofits, neighbors, and friends, there's no limit to the difference we can make. This is the power of community. This is the legacy of 40 years and the promise of a bright future.